Welcome to the JDLA and Associates Calibration Point podcast. Our podcasts are designed to bring a conversational exploration of key topics that we believe will provide value and insight to those serving in the nonprofit sector. We will highlight new developments in the field, latest research, and things we're learning from our own clients that we can share. If there are topics that you would like to see explored, please send them to us through our website at jdleavyassociates.com.
Welcome, everyone, to a new session of the Calibration Point podcast. On our show today, we get to have Sarah Downing, who is one of our in-house experts at JDLA and Associates. Sarah has been with us for many years and is an expert in her own right around nonprofit organizational topics, and especially around a focus on how we translate and communicate with donors and how we begin to frame that communication into what we hear in the field so often as donor-centric language. Sarah, this seems to be a buzzword, although when we unpack what it means, I think a lot of people will see that it's really not new. It's actually something that is historic, but we've kind of repackaged it. So Sarah, tell us, what is donor-centric language?
Well, thanks, Jamie. Donor-centric language is just focused on the donor. It is writing, communicating to them about the things that they care about. So it's putting them in the story that you're telling and engaging them to act. And that's what fundraising is. We want to motivate them to act. And when we talk to them about what we care about, this is how we do it.
So I like your point about putting them in the story. So we have a shared narrative together. And we say a lot that we invest in shared vision, shared values. The idea of putting the donor, the volunteer in the story, how we build an advocate, from what I hear you saying, together in one common story. Can you give us, what do you do? How does that happen? What are things that we ought to know in the field when we hear this language, when we think about our own writing, our own translation? Can you give us some guidance on what do you see as like the tipping points or the game changers that you experience with clients when you work in this area?
Okay, sure. So when you're talking to your clients, what you want to talk to them about is the things they care about. You might think that they care about your organization, and they do because your organization is helping those that they care about, but they don't necessarily care about how awesome your organization is or how long it's been in existence. They want to know how you're helping others. So the focus does not need to be on your organization. It needs to be on that end game, the beneficiary, like who is being cared for.
So who's being cared for? So really, could I add in another word? What I'm trying to interpret what you're saying is tie it back to a relationship in some way. Would that be a good interpretation?
Yeah, you could definitely focus on a relationship of helping another person. Ultimately, it's how they can do good in the world, how they can make the world a better place. And for the donor, they want to do that. They want to make the world a better place. They don't necessarily want to give to your organization, so your organization gets to make the world a better place. They want to be the one that makes that difference for someone. We want to engage them and letting them know how their engagement, whether it's volunteering or whether it's giving, exactly how it's making that difference. So is it buying a meal? Is it providing a night of care? That very direct language to a donor saying, when you give, this is what you're doing. Not when you give to us, this is what we do with your money. When you give, this is the difference that you make.
Okay. So really, in a sense, create a direct channel to the outcome.
Yes, exactly. Focus on the impact, the change, that beneficiary, and how they feel, their emotions, the change you're creating, physically and mentally, what that good is.
So I have heard that there are some good guidelines, and I've read a couple of these, and it was maybe you could share some on kind of to this point, how often an organization should use the word we, or what I would call other focus language, as opposed to organizational focus language, which is what I hear you saying. Can you give us some guidelines on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to use the word you, referring to the donor, as much as you can. We suggest that you use you 2 times as much as you talk about we, us, our, or the organization. But I would suggest try to avoid talking about the organization altogether. The donor, if you send them an email or you write them a letter, they know who the letter's from. Your letterhead's on there. It's on the envelope. It's in that email. They know who's writing to them. Don't focus on your organization as the middleman. Connect that donor directly to the beneficiary.
So that's a really good perspective. And, while you and I get to work together a lot, this podcast was not rehearsed. And I just said, hey, let's have a conversation about the impact that you see. And that is a pretty interesting revelation for me, Sarah, in hearing you say that. And I read it in your language a lot and what you do for our clients, but the idea of not even having to talk about our organization, but really focus directly in a seamless way, that the expectation, they already know who it's coming from, but let's just talk about the impact that you're having and the relationships and the people that you are transforming in some way, and not feeling the need, is how I'm interpreting what you're saying, that I have to make my organization present in an overt way in my letter or my conversation to a donor.
Right, exactly. I think when you try to keep your organization out of it, your writing just becomes more clear and donor focused. And so that's the strategy that I use. It just helps me to keep my focus really tightly on the donor and not get distracted by the other inputs and things that are circumstantial to what the donor really cares about.
That's really great perspective. And again, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, wow, that just makes life a whole lot easier. If I'm not having to think about the translation of my organization into the shared narrative, but rather creating a narrative that just is about the donor and the people we impact. All of a sudden, what typically creates stumbling blocks, you've just removed in a matter of 60 seconds in sharing that perspective. I know personally, just because I get to see your work, I get to hear the accolades that you get in the field from our clients, from donors who read the things that you create, the impact of what you're saying. It's just fascinating to me that I get so drawn in that I never fully was able to pull out exactly what you have done. So that's a phenomenal perspective. Unclutter the message, but not necessarily just unclutter it with what you're talking about, but unclutter it as it relates to the parties that are involved in your communication. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I urge our clients to write to their donors one-on-one. So a letter from the executive director to that individual donor. We want to think of not speaking to a room of donors, but we are talking to one person, focusing just on them and what they care about. It also helps to alleviate some of that clutter.
And as you know, as well as I, or if not better, there's phenomenal research in the field that shows that donors respond more intensely, more sacrificially, and more frequently when information is presented that ties it back, even statistical information that ties back social issues to a person as opposed to groups of individuals. And that's just, it makes complete sense, exactly what you're saying. If we were thinking of kind of your big three, obviously that's huge and transformational on so many levels. Are there any others that you would share that our audience ought to take away and say, okay, if I'm going to do one or two or three things, here are the things I need to really do a gut check on? So number one being, what I would say, get out of the way. What else would you share?
I would urge our writers to talk about emotions. When you're talking to someone one-on-one, you want to engage them in the things they care about. You want to talk about their values and what matters to them. And, really our values are rooted in often the unpleasant, the things that we don't want to happen. We don't want people to be hungry. We don't want sick people to not have medicine that they need to get better. That's what we care about. And so we need to be able to talk about those things and talk about how one person is being affected by what's happening and how one donor can make a difference for that one person. So we need to be able to tell the story in that way and talk about emotion. So my second point is talk about emotion. Don't be afraid to go there, because that's where you get the response that you're looking for, is that engagement, giving, or volunteering.
Right. And I have read research over the years that validates multiple times that something like 90 to 95%, depending on whose research you follow, of first-time donor gifts happen from an emotional and values level response, and that outcomes matter after someone connects at an emotional and value level, which definitely reflects in what you're sharing. So that'd be a good number 2. What else do you have for us?
I'd also say be kind to your donors. Think about who they are when you're writing to them. Acknowledge their relationship. Most donors are busy. They are going to give you time because they care about what you're doing, but go easy on them. Make your letters easy to read. Repeat your offer. Bold things, underline things, cut straight to the point. Be concise. Know that most donors are going to scan, so make it easy for them to do good by giving them a very clear message.
I love that theme, if I almost think about it. Be kind to your donors. And the research I have seen on writing is that if you use the Flesch-Kincaid scale, which is the grade level scale, that writing ought to be written in a 6th to 8th grade level for better translation. Is that accurate?
It is, yes. And there's a great tool out there, the Hemingway app, that you can use to check your grade level that you're writing at. But it doesn't need to be complicated. Very simple and direct will elicit the best response.
I love that point. Be kind to your donors. So number 1, get out of the way, right? Get out of the way of your communication to your donor. Number 2, don't be afraid to make it full color, in my words. Bring emotion and share emotion. And number 3, then again, the idea of being kind to the person that you're writing to. And I think about that just on so many different levels, that if I am writing something, if I'm making it easy for you to comprehend, if I'm getting out of the way of the message, if I'm adding my emotion into it, not in an over top of the way, but the way that it adds meaning, then in essence, I'm serving you in my information. I'm bringing those things together so that we can connect and be able to share something at a deeper level.
Exactly. And the last thing I would say to be kind to your donors is where my heart really lies in all this, and that is thanking them and reporting back to them. Let them know that when they gave, when they volunteered, it made a difference. Get back to them quickly in 24 to 48 hours with that thank you. Let them know that mattered, that they're just not a small part of a really big machine that went unnoticed. But as an individual, they matter to you. They make a difference. Say thank you and tell them how their gift was used. That's, I think, at the core of being donor-centric and loving your donors, is telling them what they want to know and that they did good, because that's what really matters.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. And I'm going to bring us to a close with that theme. Love your donors. View your donor and your volunteer as part of your equation for change. And
perfect.
Love your donor volunteer. Sarah, we're so thankful for your time. Again, for me, having worked with you all these years and still in a matter of a few minutes learning something that I simply did not even recognize, that I'm taking away from this, a couple of things that I'm taking away from this that I'm going to actually put into my own, even my email writings as well. Whenever I'm just connecting with people on a regular basis. So I thank you for that. And
you're most welcome.
We so appreciate it. And we will have Sarah on the show again in the future with some other fun topics. For everybody getting a chance to join us today, we are grateful for your work and your service. And we hope everyone's week, day, month, year is blessed beyond belief, and stay true and stay focused in how you love one another. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the J.D. Levy & Associates Calibration Point podcast. If you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please reach out using the contact page on our website, jdlevyassociates.com.